right, we'll go ahead and get started now. Hello, thank you everyone who's joining us. My name is Alex, and as some of you may have already known, I am Solar One's Education Department intern. Last month, we hosted the first part of this mini-series in our larger webinar series that Solar One has been putting on since the summer. This mini-series has been focused on intersectional environmentalism and specifically how the youth have been leading on this front. Last month, we focused on Indigenous environmentalists, and this month, as is appropriate for Black History Month, we are focusing on Black environmentalists. Today, we have with us three amazing, inspiring, powerful people who are going to be speaking on this issue. At Solar One, we believe in education, and unfortunately, it's not where it needs to be in terms of our K through 12 public education system. And so that's why we as an organization exist to kind of bridge that gap between the public education school system and the kind of holistic green education that our students really need in order to change the world and be impactful. So let's just dive right in. Our first part is going to be focusing on gauging the green education gap. We talked a lot last time about what green education is and why it's important, but now we kind of want to look at, well, how much work exactly needs to be done to fill that gap. This is for anyone, Elsa, Naheem, Xena, Naheem, sorry. Elsa, Naheem, Xena. What did you learn in school about environmentalism, like growing up, like specifically your K through 12 education? Of course, you can include anything that is relevant, but specifically your K through 12 education, what was that experience like?
I think I can start with this, if that's okay.
Sure.
So I remember growing up that, well, my first encounter, I should say, with understanding or having like climate justice and climate change being even brought up in our education system was recycling and global warming. But as I grew and as I learned more, I realized that it is so much more than just global warming, and it's so much more than just recycling. This is an entire climate catastrophe that is taking place internationally and will progress as time goes on. So that was my first, glimpse at like what environmentalism is in the school system. But there's so much more to, talk about, just because they did not even really visualize what it will look like in communities, who is impacted, and what harm will be done and what we can do to prevent harm. It was just, hey, this is happening, and that's it.
I think I can relate to that. For context, do you want to give us a little bit of background information on yourself, like where you grew up, and where most of your education was received?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Xena Abdul Karim. I am a first-generation Sudanese American woman. I was born in Western Appalachia. So I was raised in the mountains, but I have moved around. I used to live in Saudi Arabia. I used to live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm currently based in Atlanta. And actually the first experience that I had with climate change and learning about global warming was in Saudi Arabia. So it was really, truly like an international perspective as to, it's not just the US that's not taking action. It's, countries and societies outside of, the first world.
Thank you, Xena. Naheem or Elsa, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, guys. My name is Elsa. I am a climate justice advocate. I wear many different hats. Every day is a different day. I really never know what I'm doing. Currently, I work with Generation Green, and we are a Black-led intergenerational ecosystem movement center, resource hub, network, platform of environmentalists who focus on Black liberation through an environmental lens and environmentalism through a Black liberation lens. So they go hand in hand for us. And we work throughout the diaspora, which is something that's unique when we look at other organizations. We believe that we have to work internationally with Black youth and Black people and Black elders and Black adults, Black children everywhere. That's where a lot of my work is concentrated, but for the most part, my work is about broadening industries and movement spaces for Black women and for Black youth. But I guess as to my answer for this question, when did I first learn about environmentalism in school? I'll be honest, I really didn't learn anything. Someone asked me the same question yesterday, which is really ironic. I really didn't learn anything about environmentalism in school. I think I can remember back to third grade, maybe second grade, learning about the 3 R's, recycling, and a little bit about global warming, just very little, but nothing of substance, nothing like Xena said, no holistic nature, nothing about how we're impacting the earth, how the earth is impacting us. And so, to be quite honest, I really didn't learn anything about climate change, climate justice through an education system. Everything that I have learned, unfortunately, has been something that I had to kind of navigate on my own throughout high school. And only really because, to me, climate change or environmentalism is a people issue. And so that's why I was like, okay, well, I need to look into this. I'm really intrigued as to how this is impacting people's lives differently. But unfortunately, no, I didn't learn anything about it in my public school at all.
And where did you go to public school?
I went to public school in North Carolina. Greensboro,
Okay.
High Point area. So very conservative, but also very diverse. But in both systems, I went to 2 different school systems. Not really much of a difference when it comes to the curriculum.
Yeah. Okay. And Nahin? Sorry, I didn't mean to brush you off. That was a great introduction. And thank you for your insight. Nahin?
Yeah, my name is Nahin Carter. I'm a youth community organizer and a youth urban farmer for the Ironbound Community Corporation, which is a nonprofit organization that does a lot of things for my city and my town. So yeah, I'm also the secretary of my neighborhood tenants association. And yeah, just to answer the question, I really, to say what you guys said, recycling was really the only thing that was shown in my school. It took me being so curious as a young kid to venture out and find out about these things. But yeah, there was nothing in school teaching me about, not even climate change in school. You guys were learning about climate change. They weren't even telling us about that neither. But yeah, hopefully, us, we could be the change and go into schools and help these kids. That's something that I've been recently starting to do last year, but COVID stops everything. But hopefully we get to get back going.
Thank you, Nahin. So being products, I guess, of this system that is inherently flawed, and being so involved within environmentalism spheres, how have you felt this gap? I'm assuming you, all of us here, see climate change and environmental issues as something that are important, but on a more concrete level, and really trying to examine the roots of these issues, where have you felt this gap in green education in your experiences?
I can go.
Please.
I have seen gaps in education, but green education, particularly based off of income level and off of demographics. One thing at Generation Green, actually, the reason I was almost late is I was on a phone call for our youth in culture department where we are developing an environmental liberation curriculum to teach Black youth about environmentalism and their Blackness and their heritage, and just getting Black youth into nature, because we do not have access to green spaces like other communities do readily or safely. And so we can see that there is a large disparity in how educational resources are filtered throughout the United States, and that disproportionately impacts Black youth who do not have access to green spaces, who are not taught about conservation. When we think about environmentalism growing up in high school, whenever we would talk about environmentalism, it was always a narrative of a white issue or a white community type deal. You'd only see white people in nature. When we know that our communities, that we want to be in nature, we are connected to nature. We deserve spaces to be, you know, conservationists, to be environmentalists, but our youth are not given the resources to do so. If our schools of Black youth, of students of color, of poor, low-income students don't even have the basic necessities to clean drinking water in their school systems, if you don't have access to you know, proper lighting, which a lot of schools struggle with, then you can assume that these students are not going to be getting adequate education about climate change, about environmentalism, or issues of that sort. And so that is where I see like a direct connection between like the gap in our education system and green environmentalism. And so it's just really frustrating. Just knowing that Black kids do not have the same levels of access or even the options to access information that is really vital about a rapidly changing world and a world that impacts our health, Black youth disproportionately. The majority of students being sent back to schools right now during COVID are Black youth, are brown youth, are poor youth. And those are the same youth that do not even have adequate education in the first place because they're Black, brown, and poor youth. And so it's a circle effect of you don't have resources to learn about education. You don't have the resources in the first place, or education's not good. You don't have resources in the first place, so your environments are not even safe to be in the first place. And so the gap is not really, when it's not, the gap may be an educational gap, but it definitely impacts all aspects of life, which is one thing that we've noticed, or that I have noticed.
No, absolutely. And I think that's something that we try to emphasize within our organization as well, is that it starts with education, and education is so important in and of itself. But the real reason why it's so important is because it impacts so many different facets of life. Xena or Nahin, do you want to jump in on that or offer any other personal examples from your communities?
Yeah, I can definitely. So I am someone who was raised, again, in Western Appalachia. So I was constantly in the outdoors. I was constantly in Pisgah Forest, right? So me being able to be outside, go hiking, sit by a river, sit by a lake, and enjoy that and establish a connection with the earth definitely has forced me to be more emotional when I'm talking about climate justice, because it stems from a place that is very personal for me. And just to piggyback off of what Elsa is saying, it's so significant to have these resources available for these communities because it transpires in many other ways. For instance, food deserts. Everything that Elsa is saying applies to having access to healthy foods compared to constantly having like fast food restaurants around you, having liquor stores around you, having food, having resources available that are not going to nourish the body, similar to the ways that the academic system is not nourishing the brain at all for Black and brown communities.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think that connects well with some work that Nahin has been doing within his community. And what's it called? Is it the Down Bottoms Project? Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about
Down
that?
Bottom Farm.
Down Bottom Farm. Okay, sorry, I was close. I'm so sorry.
Just to talk about what you guys are talking about. Just trying to get kids in the city to come to the farm and come to the gardens is it was a challenge, but now we're seeing that it's not a challenge, and it's such a great thing to see because just to hear how you guys were saying like there's no urban farms or no gardens or any places like that, it really hurts me because, you know, I grew up in my city just always at the farm and always at the garden. So that was like my backyard woods, or going to the forest or going on hikes and stuff like that. And yeah, just to get that just to grow something and to eat it and stuff like that, it's totally great. And to be a part of that is awesome. And yeah, down by the farms, we're trying to push that heavily. We got it smack dead right in the middle of our community. We're always trying to get people to come through and stuff like that, farm, garden, harvest, educate them on the stuff that's going on. And we use the garden to bring people in, to do gardening, but we also, let them know about the environmental issues that's going on in the area. Yeah, just a personal quick story. When I was younger, now I know it's the largest garbage incinerator in New Jersey. I thought that was a cloud maker, which is funny because it's so many kids that probably think that's just another tower, but not knowing, that's something that's causing them asthma and things like that. So yeah, just to be able to have a garden and have an urban space like that to show these kids like, yeah, this is here and this is what we're about is so grateful because, a lot of communities don't have that.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that story. I think that's exactly kind of the example that I was hoping y'all would introduce, just because I feel like it's something so small like that I think kind of triggers some people into seeing the problem for what it really is, because I think it's easy to talk about things like on a theoretical level, on a very surface level. But when you realize like there's little kids in BIPOC and specifically Black neighborhoods that are situated near garbage incinerators or plants like this that are putting off so many toxins into the environment, and to them that's just so normal, and it's that kind of thing that we need to denormalize and also bring attention to. So thank you for bringing up that example. So kind of shifting gears now more towards Black environmentalism in general. Last month, we talked about how our current world exists within various sects of environmentalism, and Black environmentalism is no exception. Before we can unify these sects, we must acknowledge and celebrate their differences. Indigenous environmentalism had a lot to do with being pushed out, being unseen, being invisible. From my perspective, Black environmentalism is similar in this way, and that Black issues are often intentionally hidden, and Black communities are physically moved around at the will of urban developers. So let's look to our panelists about how they view Black environmentalism. What is environmentalism like within your community specifically? And how does this type of activism differ from mainstream or white activism?
So I think that mainstream general activism, environmentalism, is the kind of activism that's just like, and it's not like insignificant or inefficient at all because it mobilizes masses, but it's definitely for the masses at large, and it's not very intentional and personal as to what specific communities we are trying to target. And I think that's the difference between mainstream activism and Black environmentalism, because it's very personal, intentional work. We are trying to do work that mobilizes and activates our own communities in efforts to support and provide resources and to protect our communities from environmental disaster, and also enrich and nourish our communities with resources like healthy foods, access to farms, like everything that Nahin is talking about right now, having access to these farms in his own backyard, going hiking, my experience. These are resources that, like the Black environmental space is intentionally trying to offer to Black and Brown communities. So that's something that I really respect about our space and value.
Thank you. No, I think that's an important distinction to make. And yeah, thank you for that. Elsa or Nahin?
I can go. I was just pulling up a definition that I always use to define the definition of environment that we use at Generation Green. So let me read that to you guys. So we define environment as something bigger than just the physical. If we confine our environments just to what we can see physically in terms of nature, in terms of the outdoor, we are missing a large chunk of people's realities, and we are missing a large chunk of what the environment actually truly encompasses on a multifaceted, multi-layered level. And so the definition of environment through the environmental justice definition is that this is the complex interaction between physical, geographical, biological, social, cultural, and political conditions that surround an individual organism that ultimately determines its form and nature of survival. Environments can include your home, your place of work, schools, community parks, or the lack of. These are the places where you are born, where you live, where you learn, where you go to work, where you sleep, where you pray, where you worship, where you age. And essentially it plays a large function in our day-to-day lives and how the quality of our lives plays out as well. And so when we talk about Black environmentalism, we encompass all of this, but through the lens of what does it mean to be Black? And in the mainstream environmental spaces, you'll see that a lot of people use the definition in terms of just the physical. And so I think the difference between at least the Black environmental movement that I'm in and the mainstream environmental movement is that we focus on how the environment impacts people's lives and how people's lives impacts the environment in turn. We don't think that they're two separate things. And so it allows us to have a more holistic response to environmental issues as opposed to when you just leave out parts of the environment that maybe you wouldn't consider the environment, or maybe that you didn't know were part of the environment beforehand. And so I think that's one way that we completely differ, or that we do differ from a more mainstream environmental space.
Thank you, Elsa. Nahin, do you have anything to add to that?
I wouldn't necessarily say I know what you guys mean by like the environmentalism mainstream. I'm really more for like environmental justice work, and it just, environmental justice is just trying to bring light on a lot of the environmental issues that's going on in the community. Just a lot of things we don't have access to, and like how she's saying, what does it mean to be Black? Black environmental justice is especially a thing that I'm trying to really advocate for, have more Black and brown or BIPOC members, come through to the community and try to help, because, there's not a lot of Black and brown people that's really, advocating and stuff like that. So, just to try to recruit and have people do stuff like that is amazing. And we're trying to bring light to the racism under these environmental issues and things like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you answered the question well. What I mean when I say mainstream is essentially a version of environmentalism that is perhaps a little sanitized, right, and generalized, essentially, and it really doesn't get into all, as Xena said, it's not intentional. It doesn't get into any of the very complex issues within each community. It doesn't address anything really concretely. And I think you answered that question perfectly. So thank you, Nahin. Now, on a personal level, what does it mean to you all to be a Black environmentalist? Like, as an activist, part of existing within these spaces is defining who you are as a person, who you are as an activist, and what activism means to you personally. So I'd like to hear more on that, of what being a Black environmentalist means to you all individually. You can take some time to think on it. No, that's okay. I mean, these are all very, they're not easy questions by any means. So that's okay. Some of the answers that we got from from our Indigenous environmentalists that we were speaking with last month varied from, you know, just community involvement to, you know, kind of embarking on their own personal journey and just kind of like helping people along the way. I don't know. I think it's interesting to see what individuals, or just how individuals define themselves. You know what I mean? Because I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm kind of getting away from myself here, but my point.
I would say basically like being a Black environmental justice leader is I just had a sorry.
You're good. No,
It's
you're
very
good.
personal. It's really personal, honestly. Like this work is climate change is not something that picks and chooses which communities it, you know, screws over. However, there are certain communities that climate change impacts more intensely, most intensely, and quicker than any other community. And unfortunately, these are Black, brown, queer, trans, gay, femme, women, immigrant, marginalized, exploited communities, low-income communities. And it's not because it's like, you know, looking to see like, ooh, who can we like ruin first? It's just because we lack the socioeconomic support compared to more privileged, more white communities to combat this. We're seeing this right now directly in Houston or in Texas right now. I think I saw something on Twitter today that was electricity has like skyrocketed to 100 a month or something like that to like 11,000, just because it's so expensive. It's very scarce right now. People are not able to access it. So the people who have the resources to pay for it benefit from it. It's just very scary. So for me, I'm doing what I can to protect the people who I identify with. I'm doing what I can to protect the people who are my people, alongside everyone else, but definitely the people who are most vulnerable. I worry for my communities.
Yeah, you know, being a Black environmental justice leader, you know, we try to bring power back into the people because, you know, we have these resources that could help us, but, you know, getting the community together and you know, technically arming up as a community, you know, we live in these apartment complexes. We live next to these garbage incinerators and factories and places that burn all this kind of things. So, you know, just having us come together and fight the system and try to beat it, that's what I feel like, you know, Black environmental justice means to me. Yeah, bringing the power back to the people.
I love that. Thank you. Go ahead, Elsa.
Really summed up literally anything I could say, like everything. I was just gonna say, for me, I know a lot of people probably don't like this answer or it'll make them uncomfortable, but for me, being a Black environmentalist means I'm in a constant state of rage. I'm angry every freaking day. I stayed up till 7 a.m. last night just reading about what the heck is happening in Texas. I saw an image, half of Austin, Texas. One side has electricity and the other side doesn't have electricity. East Austin doesn't have electricity. Why does East Austin not have electricity? Because it's poor Black people that live there. So these poor Black people are dying, or they're freezing in below negative temperatures or freezing temperatures because they can't afford access, and we can't afford access to energy because it's privatized. Why is something that you need to stay alive privatized? Why is water privatized? Why is the air we breathe? It might not seem privatized, but it is. Your zip code determines the quality of air that you breathe in. Therefore, it's privatized. And so if public utilities, or what should be public utilities, are privatized, then it is going to directly harm people that do not have the means to protect themselves from it. And so I'm in a constant state of rage and anger and pain over what's happening to Black people, because what's happening to the environment is directly what's happening to us. There's this woman, she did a TED Talk, and she said, Mother Earth is a Black African woman, because the way we treat Africa and the way that we treat Black women is the same way that we treat the earth. And so the way people dispose of and treat Black women is exactly the way people treat the earth. And so I see that direct correlation in my life and in the lives of other people who look like me or are non-binary or have identities that place them at margins that we cannot control. It puts me in a state of constant rage, because me saying, I think everyone should have water. I think everyone should have shelter. I don't think anyone should be homeless. I don't think anyone should be in poverty. I don't think anyone right now in Texas should be sleeping in tents outside of a snowstorm, in a snowstorm that shouldn't happen in the first place in Texas. Who prepares for a snowstorm in Texas? Nobody, because it's Texas. Why is it going to snow in Texas? It doesn't snow in Texas, but it's snowing right now. And so it's people that look like me that are directly impacted through generations of trauma and harm tied to the earth, and directly, unfortunately, tied to people that look like me. And so I know for a lot of people that's not an answer that they want to hear, but no, I'm in a constant state of rage because of the environment and really the way that it impacts people, and because they can't control it. And that is really the only reason I do environmentalism, is for Black women and for Black youth. So that is what my environmentalism looks like.
Thank you. No, that was amazing. I think that's the whole reason that we want to have this conversation, is not to sanitize ourselves, is not to, fit in with what people are expecting or what they want you to hear. You know what I mean? Like, if you're angry, then you should say that. And so thank you for just being honest. So I want to divert from our, pre-prepared questions a little bit. I guess if there's anything from current events, or as Elsa mentioned, this once in a lifetime snow event that is occurring right now in Texas, or anything in your communities, or any projects that you've been working on or have been working on that really shaped what your idea of environmentalism or Black environmentalism is, something that really touched you, something that just was kind of like a turning point in your activist journey.
So I was raised in Western Appalachia, which is a very, very white area. And so the having representation of people who look like me is rare. So when the George Floyd, Breonna Taylor protests were happening all across the US and internationally, in my area, I organized a demonstration in my local, very, very conservative, rural, Trump supporting town. So we went, and it was kind of it was all old white people who were there. And honestly, yes, these are the people who we would like to talk to and who we're trying to, influence, but there are communities in our age group who are able to vote in mass numbers and who are able to organize and offer mutual aid to communities that also need to hear our experiences and also need to, get involved. However, I ended up leaving that demonstration and going to the one in Asheville with my sister. When I got there, there was a white woman leading the protest, and it was very, very strange, just because to have someone who has no idea what it's like to live within the realm of being in the African diaspora, chant and lead and demand what our wishes are, but having not really an idea of what it is based off of our own experiences, felt very uncomfortable. So yes, I really appreciated having an ally in that realm, but not at the forefront. It needed to be one of us there. So my sister and I somehow got a hold of the microphones and started chanting our own chants, and ended up leading the protest ourselves. As an environmentalist, seeing how Because there are Black elders in Asheville, of course. Like there are Black communities that reside there. It's just not very vocal, unfortunately. That or they're just not being represented fairly enough. So being there and having Black elders like be involved and just cheer us on and be comfortable and like tell us that they are excited for where we take our movement and where we take our people next, was it enriched my soul, honestly. And as an environmentalist, I felt empowered. I felt like, okay, like if we are trying to reach liberation, we cannot do that without trying to address environmentalism and how racism transpires environmentally. So it just made me feel like I am in the place that I need to be. If anything, I need to intensify the work that I'm doing just because it's so necessary to reach where we need to be as a body.
Yeah, thank you for that experience. I think that brings up two really important points that, I have learned personally over like my activist journey and my education. One was that, you in all of this like white space, you felt like that wasn't where you wanted to be. And I think it's important to realize, or I guess, I don't know if this is what exactly you were trying to say, but it just kind of reminded me of this idea that, Black and brown people don't exist to educate white folks. You know what I mean? Like, that's great if people decide to take on that, that endeavor. But, that's not always, the onus is not on Black folks to inform, other colored folks of their issues, you know what I mean? And so I think, I don't know, that kind of memory of yours was reminiscent of those kind of lessons that I've learned myself. And then the second point of what an ally looks like, you know what I mean? It's important to, we of course always encourage people to, take up arms and join their Black brothers and sisters or brown brothers and sisters in these issues, but there's a certain way to do it. So thank you for bringing that up. Elsa or Nahin, do you guys have any experiences that kind of shaped what Black environmentalism means to you, whether recently or in the past?
Yeah, I can go briefly. So I think it was my freshman year of high school. That was like so long ago. Never mind. I'm at my freshman year of college. I was transitioning out of an organization, a climate justice organization, and I was just trying to figure out exactly what I want to do, the type of work I want to do, and I knew I wanted to focus on Black women and Black youth primarily. I just didn't know how I could really intersect that into environmentalism per se. So I kind of just did things here and there. Which, I still do. I told you guys I wear many different hats. Every day is different. But someone from my school at Howard reached out to me, and they were telling me that they're really interested in starting a Black environmental justice group. And I was like, okay, well, this is really cool, guys. I'm interested. And I think at that point, I really didn't understand the gravity of what I was signing on to. And obviously the group of Generation Green. I've been working with them since about like our founding date. Our 1 year anniversary officially is like January 4th. So it just passed. And they were coming to me talking about, okay, well, we want to create a Black environmental space because the spaces that exist that are environments right now are unsafe for Black youth. They're unsafe for Black environmentalists and Black advocates. You're not paid well, you're not respected, you're doing more labor than you're asked, you're doing emotional labor, you're dealing with racism, you're dealing with misogyny, you're dealing with misogynoir if you're a Black woman, trans misogynoir if you're a Black trans woman. And so there are different layers to like the experiences that you have to deal with on top of wanting to work on the environment. You can't just simply work on the environment. you have to be a racial advocate, or you can't focus on your Blackness in the environment, you have to focus on the environment. And so when Destiny Hodges, our co-executive director, reached out to me, I was ecstatic. But what really has shaped me working in this group is that everyone in this group is a visionary, and they imagine things that have not yet come to fruition. And every day we and the people I work with push to expand our envelope of reality. And it challenges me every single day to not think between the confines of what I think can happen or what is possible. In the span of a year, we have grown rapidly and tremendously, and we've even been able to have the honor of bringing on paid fellows, like within 5 months of our organization coming together, and having a paid staff, and like really branching out and bridging those networks within the diaspora, and laying the foundation and the framework of our politics and the work that we're doing in our departments. And just knowing that, like, if I have a group of like 8 committed people that are dedicated to a world that we have not seen yet and are constantly pushing the envelope of what is possible, it energizes me and it challenges me to think in a completely different way. And it puts me out of my comfort zone every single day. I don't even know how to put it into words. I don't know how to put it into words. It's just, I don't know. I thought I wouldn't be able to find a way to bridge Blackness and environment together. And here comes a group of amazing students that do it effortlessly. And they do it in a way that forces me to think what is possible without thinking about what is actively here right now, and making it possible, and operating from a place of abundance and limitless opportunity. And so it's expanded the way that I think about environmentalism and how we can build as a movement, and how we can be sustainable, and how we can, instead of mimicking the world around us, we can embody the values that we want to see. And so that is one major experience that's been ongoing for the past year that has reshaped the way that I work personally and the way that I view environmentalism.
Thank you. Congratulations for being a part of this, and for helping your organization grow. That's very impressive about the paid staff and fellows. That's so cool. And I look forward to learning more about your organization and watching y'all grow. Nahin, do you have anything to add to the conversation about? Go ahead, please.
Oh yeah. So yeah, an experience that really shaped me, or just made me know that I really want to continue doing this is so there's like I said earlier, there's a garbage incinerator right about less than, or at least a mile away from where I live at, and the people that run that facility, they were having a meeting with like other people to try to have more people come through and build things back there and try to pollute the community even more. And we were planning to, not sneakishly, but sneaky, we were planning on gathering the community together and to go march down there. But when I got out of school that day, it was snowing like crazy, like a blizzard. So I was thinking nobody was going to come through. And I'm not going to lie, so many people came through in the snow. We marched in the snow. We let them hear our voices. And yeah, that was an experience that really warmed my heart, because I really didn't think the community was going to pull through. I didn't even think I was going to pull through that day. And just to see everybody lace their boots up and their hoodies and stuff like that and go march on down, it just lets me know that I got to keep doing this, and I got to keep getting people to be a part of this.
Yo, that makes me want to cry. That is so beautiful. So much. Like, even when I'm in protest spaces or like movement demonstrations, like when I see people just demonstrating their power as people, it does something to my heart.
That's just awesome.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I think that is a testament to how much people can care, right? Especially when you have the right leader in front of them, guiding them in the right direction. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that, Nahin. So now more from like a generational lens. What are some issues that you all think are most important for youth and Black youth to focus on that weren't necessarily issues 1, 2, or 3 generations ago, that are specifically targeted towards this generation and towards the youth? And that can be like environmental issues, or that can be issues within activism, like trying to get your message across. So those kind of 2 aspects of it.
So obviously we are on a time constraint in terms of climate change. So compared to previous generations, we have to take action. We need to see institutional change like no other generation before has had to force. So that is clearly something that we have to force right now. But also, we are also in a whole social revolution. Like there are so many movement spaces that are coming into fruition and gaining momentum and receiving the attention and the changes that need to be made. Black Lives Matter, Indigenous rights, gay rights, trans rights. These are movement spaces that are growing alongside climate justice, if that makes sense. And it's not that they are separate, they are together. So these are things that we all have to deal with at the same time to reach liberation as, within the Black community, and then also to solve climate change. These are things that need to be tackled together. So I don't think any other generation before has had to deal with this, but I do think that's something that the organizing space needs to modify, is learning from our previous generations or our ancestors and seeing how they tackled these movement spaces. What were their, what's the word? What, I don't know what the word is, but like the things that they did.
Strategy, maybe?
Yeah, their strategies. Like, how can we emulate their strategies and like add it into what we're already doing? Just because clearly what they were doing worked. What we are doing worked. If we do it together, it is an intergenerational movement and we can really change the world.
Thank you, Xena. Elsa or Nahin?
The question was, I guess, the different problems that we face, basically like different generations.
So sorry, to clarify the question, what specifically, what issues do Black youth face that maybe haven't been, presented in the past few generations? Like this is a novel space, right? And so what are the issues that particularly pertain to Black youth? And that could be either environmental issues, specifically, like, as Xena was saying, like climate change is pressing. Like in previous generations, that hasn't been as big of an issue, but now it is. And so that's why Black youth need to focus on that now. But also within like the activist space, are there any like more recent issues that Black youth have to face within the activist space that previous generations and previous activists haven't had to necessarily tackle?
I'm sorry, I had cut out. My phone was dying. But
you're good. Did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I feel like I wouldn't say like it's a huge problem, but growing up in North New Jersey, talking a lot about climate change and environmental issues, or just topics that Black and brown people normally don't really talk about. You get kind of put in this kind of box of like, oh, he's the type of person that's just like wanting to educate or like preach and stuff like that. So personally for me, it's really hard to keep the balance of like, trying to keep this kind of social presence to where I'm like, not a cool, but cool type of person, and still on the side try to preach about all the environmental issues and racial issues and housing issues that's going on in the area. So yeah, that's I feel like that's a problem that my generation kind of faces. I know I've talked to a couple of youth organizers that's around my age that tell me they go through the same problems and stuff like that, because we can use social media as an advantage to teach people and preach to people, but if you do it too much, kind of, you're looked at it a certain way. So I try to find the balance in between educating and trying to be cool in a sense.
Elsa, go ahead. Yeah, no, thank you, Nahin. I think that's really important.
I'd say something unique that faces Black youth right now is the student loan crisis, COVID, and something else that is impacting Black activists particularly is the commercialization of activism that's been happening the past few years. A few years ago, you couldn't say white supremacy on a panel. You could, but it didn't go anywhere. So right now you have, it's great because it means our conversation is moving in the right direction, but now you can talk about white supremacy openly and freely, and you won't get doxxed for it. But there's been a commodification of like our activism and the work that we do to the point where you have Black youth that are being erased for the work that they're doing, and white youth will be uplifted for saying the same thing or regurgitating what Black youth have been advocating for years. We saw it in the gun violence movement that happened very rapidly. You see it in the environmental movement where Black youth and youth of color are passed over for opportunities, or maybe they're doing the on the ground work, but they will never, ever, ever, ever be allowed to become the face of a movement or be a face of a movement. And so that's one thing that's facing Black youth within activism spaces, but outside of activism spaces, student loan debt is killing the future of Black youth. And it's a crisis that we haven't talked about. It's something that prevents us from like living like actual full lives. You can't afford to pay decent rent. Rent is skyrocketing across the city. Every city, there's not a city where you can work on minimum wage and afford a 1-bedroom apartment. There's not a city where tuition is affordable. And who is that going to impact the most? Black youth. Who is COVID currently impacting the most right now? Black essential workers, brown essential workers, people that are on the front lines. And so I know those are very broad issues and they might seem unconnected. I don't have the time to really connect them right now, but all of these issues that are impacting society, every single one of these issues are impacting Black people and Black youth in a completely different way that maybe a lot of people aren't exposed to, or they haven't had the time to analyze, or they're just not exposed to it. And so really any issue you could think of, it's impacting Black youth in a very vulnerable way.
Yeah, like the food system is really affecting the Black communities because growing up where I'm from, is just go to the corner store, go to the fast food spot really quick. And when I was about 10 years old, that's when I started going to the garden and stuff like that, and eating these fresh vegetables and fruits and herbs and things like that. And just to see the Black community not have access to fresh food like that is definitely a huge problem. And it falls in the lines of food justice. If you guys want to look that up and educate yourself on that. But yeah, personally, what we do in my community is, since we have I wouldn't say huge, but a fairly big urban farm. We grow all our own stuff and we sell it for affordable prices at our farmers market every Friday. Due to COVID, we've recently been doing it online with pickups and stuff like that. But even that's still kind of a problem because a lot of people don't have access to computers and internet and stuff like that. And now that I'm thinking about it, also another problem would be with the Wi-Fi and kids not being able to educate themselves because they don't have the resources or tools to be able to educate themselves. And some of the schools may not be providing things like that. I know if I was in school around this time right now, I would be struggling because growing up we didn't have Wi-Fi. So just to just to think about something like that is crazy, and to feel the pain of some parents in the community is heartbreaking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Solar One did a post recently about food justice, which of course only touches the surface, but yeah, no, and I agree with Elsa and Nahin and Xena. You all, I think it was maybe kind of a silly question, because the question was what issues do Black youth face, but it's kind of like all of them. and I don't mean that I laugh, but I mean I say that seriously, like yeah, all of them. And I think it's about each individual person's environmentalist journey or activist journey is about finding those niche issues that really speak to you and that really motivate you, and tackling them head on. So we have only a few minutes left, but Nahin brought something up that I thought was really interesting. This idea of, and I think it's very particular to Black folks. Oh, his phone probably died. Oh no. Okay. So I mean, you two can still answer this question. But yeah, I think it's something that particularly affects Black folks is this trying to navigate this idea of like respectability politics, and trying to and within the lens of youth, trying to be cool, you know what I mean, to reach more people. Where do you find the balance, or how does that kind of idea sit with you, and what do you all individually do about that?
I wanted to just like complete a thought from the last subject that we were on really quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
When we talk about environmentalism, it is, and it's a completely intersectional topic. So that's why it pertains to student loan debt and COVID, food deserts, liberation movement at large. Like all of these things are so intertwined. Like Elsa, what she was saying about environment is not exclusively physical. Environment is the situations that you are in. Environment is your physical realm, of course, but also like, what are the factors that are influencing your life? That's what makes your environment whole. But yeah, so intersectionality is key, major key in this movement space. But what you're saying right now about like respectability and all of that stuff, I was having a conversation with my sister about this today, because I feel like it's really hard being an activist and trying to learn, trying to grow who you are as a person. Like we are youth organizers. We are building who we are, our identities still. So we still have so much to learn about the systems around us, how we can deconstruct them, and also ourselves. So I think it's very, very important to extend ourselves a lot of grace. We are human beings that make mistakes. We are human beings who are constantly learning. So it's very important, I think, to be true to ourselves and then allow ourselves to feel what we feel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you, Xena. Elsa, did you have anything?
Yeah, I guess to the question about like being an activist and navigating being a person and an activist, I'll say that's a balance I'm still trying to figure out. It's really difficult, but at the end of the day, I'm nobody's leader. I'm just an activist. I'm just an advocate. I'm doing work that I think is important. Don't place youth or activists on a pedestal, because we will disappoint. We are growing, we are learning, we are making mistakes. That's a promise. I made a mistake an hour ago, I'll make a mistake in an hour from now. And so I extend grace to the people I work with. I extend grace to Black youth, the most grace to Black youth. And so I value the same in return. And then I forgot what I was gonna say, but I forgot what I was just gonna say. Basically, I mean, we're all just growing, we're learning. I don't place anyone on a pedestal unless they put themselves there, because we're just doing our best to impact our communities. Activists, organizers, they're regular people. They do the same things your kids do. They do the same things your parents do, your cousins do, people in your neighborhood, all of it. Everything that you know that you do, we do it too. The only difference is that we activists just share a burden of wanting to change the world. It's not a burden, it can be a burden, but the only difference is that we're investing time into something bigger than ourselves, but it doesn't mean that we're still not ourselves at the end of the day.
Thank you, Elsa. Thank you to all of you, Xena, Elsa, Nahin, for joining us today. We are unfortunately out of time. Thank you to all of the audience members that joined us today. We will be sending a follow-up email with all of the information that was mentioned by each of our panelists. So if you want to learn more, engage, you absolutely can, and we will be sure to provide you with those sources.